Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. We begin today's Raj Yoga class from where we left last time. We were talking about how to control prana with the help of a wonderful illustration where a king imprisoned his minister on the top of a tower, and how the minister asked his wife to help him get down with 4 ingredients: a beetle, a little honey of course, and a silken thread, a thin twine, a pack thread, and finally a rope. The significance of that story, if you remember, that the beetle carried the silk thread by climbing the wall of the tower and reached the top when the minister caught hold of that silken thread. Once the silken thread was in the hands of the minister, he asked his wife to attach a small thread, a thin thread, to that the other end of the silken thread, and he pulled it up. When the thread came, he asked his wife to attach a pack thread which was slightly stouter than the thin thread, and then he slowly pulled it without breaking the thread. When the pack thread also went, he pulled it fully towards him. At the other end of the pack thread, he asked his wife to tie a rope now, because that pack thread was strong enough to to pull the rope, the heavy rope with which he could come down. He used that rope. Finally, he pulled the rope and then he tied the rope to the window and slowly climbed down using that rope. Of course, he could not have come down using a silken thread or even the other threads. They would have broken. The significance of this particular story, which Swamiji gives in this case, is to explain the importance of breath when we do pranayama. He has first taken pains to explain to us that control of breath is not pranayama, as it is popularly misunderstood. Just to explain to us this particular fact, he is explaining through this wonderful story, how the king used the silken thread, which was the breath, the breathing which we do, how he used the breath to control the pack thread, to control the thin thread, which was the nervous current. Then with that nerve current, because when you regulate your breathing, your nervous currents come under your control. And when you come under your control, when the nerve currents which are within the body, which is within the spinal cord, come under your control, you can control your thoughts. And when you control your thoughts, which is like the pack thread, the rope of prana which is actually responsible for in this human body to make the body function, to make the mind function and take you higher. So the control of prana is very essential. It is a link between the body, the Annamaya Kosha, and the Manomaya Kosha and the higher koshas. So without prana, prana is a very important link in our entire personality. You have to remember that this control of prana is what is meant by pranayama. The control of prana, not the control of breath. Breath is just like that silken thread. No doubt it is necessary, because without that, the minister would not have been able to control the rope, or maybe take the rope to escape. To escape, he had to use the rope only, that is, use the prana. We have to use our prana, we have to strengthen our prana, somehow connect it to the universal prana, which belongs to God or Ishvara, and that universal prana will save us and take us to mukti. So, control of prana is one of the steps in Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali's yoga. That's why Swamiji gives so much importance to that. But as it is popularly misunderstood, Swamiji took pains even in those days. I think there was some kind of idea of what pranayama was as part of the Hatha Yoga, and people thought that was all everything about pranayama, to have a healthy body by doing various sorts of exercises, kapalbhati and all. You no doubt you get a very strong body, and regulated breathing can help you your physiological body, I mean the Annamaya kosha, to a very large extent. It will definitely, regular breathing helps you. But that's not the purpose here. Here the purpose is entirely different. You use breath only as the silken thread with which you can drag up all the subsequent threads and finally the rope, and then make your way to freedom and then escape. How do you do that? That is the essence of Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga teaches you exactly that. It teaches you how to catch hold of breath and then finally control your prana through 4 different steps. It is not the breath alone that controls your prana. Breath controls many things. It regulates the nervous system first. The nervous currents or the nervous system, if it is regulated, it helps you in controlling your thoughts. So they are controlling your thoughts, and the controlled thoughts, because as I told you, the more subtler the level of our personality, the more powerful it becomes. So more powerful than the prana, more powerful than the body is the prana, pranamaya kosha. More powerful than the pranamaya kosha is the manomaya kosha, the mind. More powerful than the manomaya kosha is the vijnanamaya kosha, or the level of the buddhi. Because as our personality gets finer and finer, it's not that our personality changes. We have all these koshas, but our identity, our primary identity should not be with the body. It should be more with the higher aspects of our personality, beginning with prana. And prana helps us to do it. It helps us, it gives us the requisite energy to push our identity from a body consciousness to a mind consciousness to a buddhi consciousness, and finally takes us beyond to pure consciousness, which is known as mukti. So this is also illustrated through another story, which is a beautiful story, which Swamiji tells, that gods and demons, in our mythology, they have shown that demons are people. Actually, there are no separate category of gods, and human being is in between these two, gods and demons. Gods and demons are not between, they are a different category, but there are 2 categories of beings which have been classified as gods and demons. Now the story goes that they went, and of course they finally show that human birth is much more valuable, because it is only through being born as a human being one can aspire to get liberation or get moksha or nirvana or mukti. So this Swamiji illustrates through a beautiful story that both these categories of beings, demons as well as gods, went to Brahma, went to the Creator, and asked him, what is this self? Everybody says, we know what the self is. We have our own idea of self. And is the self, by the self, what do we mean? We have these 5 different layers, 5 different aspects, at increasing in the level of subtlety. The Annamaya kosha, the Pranamaya kosha, the Vijnanamaya kosha, the Anandamaya kosha, and beyond that is the pure consciousness. So the lower five are form part of the Prakriti, and Purusha is beyond them. Our real identity is with the consciousness. That is the goal of life. But progressively, we have to change our identity which we have with different layers of our consciousness. That is what is meant by spiritual life. Spiritual life, according to Swamiji, it's one of the most important quotation of Swami Vivekananda. It's a very significant thing. It says, what do you mean by a civilized person? What is civilization? Everybody says that we should be civilized people. What actually means is we should not be brutes. Normal idea of, if you tell a well-read person, an intellectual person, he is a civilized person, or we say that we refer to somebody as a civilized person, we definitely mean that he is not animal-like in his instincts. He is much more polished. That's the only idea of civilization we have. But Swamiji gave a perfect definition of civilization. When do you consider that whole humanity has become civilized? When they identify themselves with the spirit rather than the body. So he says, civilization is nothing but progressive reading of the spirit into matter. What we see is as matter, what we see as our physical body, has a higher dimension, and as we go higher and higher, the progressive reading of the spirit, the progressive reading of the spirit into this matter, the higher you go, the more spiritual you become and the more civilized you become. That's a simple definition. The progressive reading of matter into of reading of matter of the spirit into matter. When we see more of spirit than matter, we become more and more evolved, more and more civilized. That's why a person who behaves like a brute is still at an animal level or is at a physical level. The moment he becomes intellectual, or the moment he becomes sympathetic, empathetic, the moment he develops his moral virtues, which can happen only when he raises his level of identity to more and more subtle levels, like the Vijnanamaya Kosha. When he does that, you will find that he is considered to be more and more pure and more civilized. That's the idea of civilization. But we normally associate with a civilized person a person who is full of moral virtues. We don't go beyond that. But there are stages even beyond that. It's not just enough to be a moral person. One has to go and transcend and perceive the spirit. The more you read the spirit into matter, the more civilized you are. So these demons and gods, they approached Brahma, and Brahma told them, they asked, is the self matter? Is the self matter or the Annamaya Kosha? Or is our body the self? So Brahma simply nodded, because you see, we can identify ourselves with any one of these koshas and still we have an identity. It's not that we cease to identify ourselves with our bodies. As long as we are humans, as long as we have bodies, which both these gods and devas, they had different types of bodies, but they all the same, they had their bodies. They had some Annamaya Kosha, not exactly like human beings, but they had. Now, these two types of categories of people went to Brahma, and Brahma just nodded his head, because he knew that if both these demons and the devas and the gods are referred to as devas. We should not say God, because there is only one God, that is Ishvara. We are not here when we say gods, they are the different deities who have some superior virtues than the demons. So human being can be a demon, can be a god. If he exhibits wonderful virtues, great virtues, godly virtues, we can even say he's a god man. Or if he has virtues which are befitting to a demon, then we call him a demonical person. So human being can go either way. If he identifies himself more with asuric qualities. Demons are known as asuras. That is the word which Bhagavad Gita uses. Either you have daivic qualities, that is divine qualities, or you have asuric qualities. So if you have more asuric qualities, you behave like an asura. So asuras and demons are not, or these gods are not some other beings. They are human beings, but they have been categorized into two categories. One with divine qualities, which are devas, one which with the demonical qualities or asuric qualities, they are known as asuras. So these asuras, Brahma simply nodded his head. He didn't say that the self is the self which they were looking for. It's not in the body. It is definitely in the body. But he just he nodded his head. So both of them went back to their respective duties, and the demons thought that the self is the body. So let me just take care of the body. Let me enjoy this body till it lives, of course. The day it dies, then you can no longer enjoy. They did not have the foresight to think, these asuras, and thought the body is everything. So they drank, they ate, they made merry as long as they could. And in fact, they even defeated the devas in some respects, because you find in this world, often the people who are crooked and cruel, they seem to flourish more in the world because they are given to total obsession. I mean, they are totally obsessed with their physical body. So they are naturally very strong. That's why when it comes to physical fights, very often these asuras defeated the devas. If you see these wonderful mythological stories, the fight between gods and the demons, or the devas and the asuras, if you see the fight, very often the asuras win because they have superior physical qualities, physical strength, prowess. And somehow they have thought, because they have given their everything to the body, they have given everything to material life. But their power is limited. Finally, you see the devas win. If you take up any story, it begins with asuras winning, the devas lose, then the devas go to Brahma or Vishnu or Shiva. That's the story. That's most of the stories. They go this way only. The first, the asuras lose, and then they're deprived of their property and all those things, and then they go crying and they go weeping, and then they get the help from either Shiva, Vishnu, who is compassionate enough, because finally Satyameva Jayate, truth triumphs, but it takes time. That's what we see in this world. Apparently, the asuras always seem to win the battle. The more powerful, the strong, the physically strong, because human beings, as a general rule, appreciate physical greatness, physical strength. They think that is all in life, because they have not been introduced to the life of the spirit. They don't know the power behind the spirit, the power behind higher existence, higher levels of identification of the self. So these devas also got the same advice. Some of the devas practiced that. They thought the self is the body, and they became very powerful. And they sometimes even defeated the asuras. So there was a constant fight between devas and asuras. And sometimes the devas won. Very often they lost because asuras were more convinced. They had more faith in their body and their physical ability than the devas. So very often they lost. So when they started losing, fortunately, that's why sometimes they say sorrow is a great teacher. So when the devas lost, they thought, okay, we lost the battle because we thought the physical strength is everything. When we asked Brahma, he just nodded his head, but there should be something other than the physical body. We see that the physical body is sometimes strong. As long as we enjoy, as long as everything is happy, we are very strong. But the moment this physical strength wanes, the moment our wealth goes away, moment troubles start coming in our life, then we find that this holding on any longer to this physical existence does not help us. So they were a bit wise, and they thought there is some higher existence than this body, because they saw their body becomes weak. When the prana is weak, they found that the body also becomes weak. They can't enjoy life. So they went back to Brahma. They said, you said this body, this Annamaya Kosha is, the body is the self. But we think prana is more stronger than the body, because the prana, if it is strong, the body becomes strong. And that's why we lose this battle with this asura. So is prana the self? The Brahma, as usual, again nodded his head, because that is also true. Though the prana is slightly higher than the Annamaya Kosha, and these devas realize that the body has its own limitation. After a certain time, it does not support you. It doesn't, you may be strong for say 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, but after that the body starts waning. It starts getting weaker and weaker. So what is responsible for that weakness? This weakening of the prana. So the devas were more intelligent, and they did go back to Brahma, unlike the asuras, who are happy with strengthening their body, doing all sorts of physical exercises, going to gym and all those things. They were very strong, and they were happy with their physical strength and physical enjoyment and eating, and as long as it was, the body was strong. But the devas had some foresight, so they thought, okay, this prana is much more stronger. So they go back to this, they go back to Brahma. Brahma says, yes, prana is definitely stronger, and prana is the self. So they are very happy. They come back, and then they try to do pranayama, as Swamiji says. They try to control their prana. They get superior powers, because they add one dimension to their personality, which was just physical. Now they have added this prana also. They gave so much importance, more importance to prana, control of prana. They could control, they found surprisingly that they could control their nerve currents. They could do so many wonderful things and defeat these asuras. But still, those asuras defeated them, so they again went back. Then they thought, this prana sometimes is strong, sometimes it is weak. And when it is weak, our mind gets weak. We lose our mental strength, and we lose our battle to these asuras, these demons. So there should be something higher than this prana, which is ourself. We should identify with that. So they go back to Brahma and says, oh, now we have understood. Prana may be strong, Annamaya Kosha body may be strong, but our mind is not strong always. The mind becomes weak. Though we are physically strong, we lose the battle because mentally we are weak. So is the mind the self? So Brahma again nods his head. That is what the Guru does. Whenever the disciple, say the disciple is at the kindergarten level, if he says 2 plus 2 is 4, he is satisfied with that. He doesn't bother to teach him the higher mathematics. He just waits for the child to grow. For the kindergarten child, 2 plus 2 is enough, and that is the truth for him. But the more advanced he becomes, he learns higher forms of mathematics, and then the teacher teaches him that. So Brahma, when he says, okay, you are the prana, fine, they go back, they learn, they again graduate to a higher class, these devas, and then they say the mind is, says, yes, mind is the self. So you go back. So they go back, they strengthen the mind, they get some further powers. But then they find that this mind is also subject to many things. Sometimes the mind, which is nothing but a set of skills, different skills which you have acquired throughout your life, helps you in controlling the prana, helps you in controlling the body. But still, they find that it is not adequate, because sometimes this mind goes into depression. The mind has its own strengths, the mind has its own weakness. Suddenly they found that the mind suddenly becomes weak. Then they remember that Brahma had told us the self is eternal, it is of the nature of Satchidananda, but this mind doesn't seem to be the self. This mental level is not the real self. It's not me, because the mind goes down. How can a self, how can that supreme self, which I should identify myself with, how can it become weak? But I see in my day-to-day experience tells me that the mind is not always on a high. It sometimes goes down. It becomes depressed. So this mind cannot be the self. There should be something higher. So they again go back, and then the Brahma, so progressively they go back, and Swamiji says They go to higher levels of identification, and then they finally realize that the self is uh, Tattvamasi, means that self is the consciousness, the supreme consciousness, which is even beyond the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the Anandamaya Kosha, beyond that, beyond the 5 levels of existence which characterize a human body. So the human being has the advantage of living at any one of these levels. If he lives at the lowest level, he is asuric, he is demonic. If he lives at higher levels, perhaps he is daivik, but still he is a deva. He has not realized. The devas also were satisfied with the answer, and they did not go, unless they went further, they would not be free. So if they were satisfied at any particular level, at the Manomaya Kosha level, or at the by identifying their self as the Manomaya Kosha, which was far superior than the Pranamaya Kosha, or the Vijnanamaya Kosha, where they developed this buddhi, and this buddhi was key to their further development. Some of the devas, some of the good human beings, some of the dhiras, as Kathopanishad says, those people are dhiras who try to go inward. They try to find their self beyond buddhi also. They said they used their buddhi, of course, but they knew that this buddhi, this wisdom, after all, gives you the sense of right and wrong. What is dharma, what is adharma. It makes you a civilized human being, but still it does not solve the problem of death. It does not make you eternal. So some of the devas, some of these higher evolved human beings, they continue further, and then they go to a plane where they transcend all these koshas and finally identify themselves with the Purusha or the pure consciousness. So that is why first the self as prana, first as the self as body, which was common with the asuras, which asuras did. Then they identify self as the vital forces which run the body as prana, or the forces which we see around us in the universe. So when we manipulate that, we become superior to asuras and then try to manipulate this world, make use of our prana and others' prana. We dominate human beings, we use machines, we use the energy very wisely, and the self is identified as the mind. That is practically the progress as it is understood in the Western civilization. So a very well developed intellectual mind or intellectual personality, they say, is sufficient to solve all our problems. We can live happily, we can earn money, we can wisely invest in, we get a lot of security, no doubt, by developing our intellectual capabilities and become very strong and safe and secure in this world. But that is as far as the mind is concerned. We still have not gone beyond. And that is where most of the devas got stuck. They got stuck thinking that they have controlled their minds, they have far more intelligent, and they defeated the asuras and they were happy in their heavens. But the scriptures say that only a few try to inquire or go further, because they find that with all the wealth, with all the power, with all the worldly gains which these devas had, they have to renounce their, even these devas, and if you see the stories, even Indra's job is not permanent. Indra, who is supposed to be the head of all the devas, the different devas are the different forces. These stories are wonderful, in our mythology. Even Indra is not a permanent position. The Indra changes. The moment he loses the battle with the Asuras, he has to give up his, and then some new Indra is appointed, depending on his. So we find in this world also, intellectual superiority does not, one person is superior, somebody who works more hard and becomes more intelligent than him gets all the power, and then he demotes him, and then he loses everything. And that game of chance we see in this world also. People who are rich, and all of a sudden something happens and they just die, leaving everything behind. So the self as one beyond birth and death, beyond thought, endless and eternal, is what Brahma actually told these devas, and some devas could catch that hint and go beyond. That is the goal of yoga. And Swamiji adds, says that this body is nothing but a series of changes. As we see, prana is acting upon the akasha, which we discussed last time. Akasha is the primal stuff. And prana is the entire matrix of the material universe, and it is acted upon by the universal prana, which are the forces. So the body is nothing but prana acting upon this material universe and effecting a series of changes. We grow from a child to an adult, we get a stronger and stronger body, but all the same, one day this akasha will be destroyed, this body will be destroyed, and the prana will try to affix itself with the other superior faculties of our personality. It will go and take up another body. That is how we explain transmigration. That this prana, this akasha or this body, which is nothing but a series of changes, some molecules, some cells evolving, some cells dying, and so many things are happening, so many trillions of cells. The doctors know that trillions of cells are a constant influx of new cells, growth of cells, destruction of cells, old cells. So practically we are overhauling our body. It's a series of changes. So Swamiji says these devas were wise enough to know that this is body is keeping changing. So we have to hold on to something higher. They held on to prana. They controlled the prana and try to control the universal prana. Got rid of the limitation of the body to a certain extent, but found that even the prana waxes and wanes. It's very strong at certain times, but suddenly it loses, and that they found is because of the mind. Because we can't control our mind, we can't control our prana, we can't control our body. So this series of changes uh, is what is known as body. But still, it is not unimportant, because only in this body you get moksha. Swamiji says, though this body, Annamaya Kosha, is not important, in the sense it's not everything, but it is very important, because it is only in this body that we get moksha. Human birth is the greatest birth. That's what Swamiji says next. And you see it in other traditions also, Islam and Jew. God created man first. That's what they believe. Their mythology also points to the same thing, that human birth is very valuable. That's what Swamiji wants to say, that it's not just Hinduism, but Islam and Judaism, and then which led to Christianity, of course. So all these religions believe that God created man, and after creating man, he asked the angels. Angels are something like devas of Indian mythology. So these devas, after creating man, he asked these devas to bow down to man. So that's why Shankaracharya says this human birth is very valuable. Even the gods bow down to a noble human being, because he has the capacity. When he gets this Annamaya Kosha, he can do sadhana and he can rise himself above even the devas and become one with the infinite spirit, with the eternal. So this fact is there in every religion. It is in seed form in different mythologies of different religions. Otherwise, why will the angels? We naturally hope or think that the devas come to our help. We often worship these devas also, the smaller deities, the sun god, the moon god, or maybe there are different traditions where we worship the wind god. We worship so many people other than Ishvara himself. We worship the smaller gods because we worship this. Some people have the idea of worshipping Indra because he is controlling the thunderstorms. We worship Surya. So we do Gayatri. We do so many other forms of worship. We worship the forces of nature. That is how religion uh, started. And we worship these forces of nature, personalizing them and thinking they are different deities. They are fine. They do come to our help. But even these gods are powerless before the supreme self or before the supreme consciousness, eternal consciousness. They have their own respective fields of power, and they are powerful only in those particular aspects. So that's why when we want smaller gifts, we worship these smaller gods. If we want to say we want wealth, we go to the god or goddess of wealth or god of wealth, and we are happy if we get wealth. Because if we worship God who can just give us physical wealth, God will give us physical wealth. Just as Brahma said, you want the body, okay, you think the self is body and behave. He doesn't say, because for Brahma, for the creator, all these things are his creation, whether it is the gross body But at what level we want to stay, that is our choice. If we want to live like asuras, if we are satisfied with these demonical qualities, there are a lot of very successful demons. I mean, successful asuras who are very strong, they're very wealthy, they are happy. Okay, it is fine as long as the wealth lasts, they will be powerful. Just as the asuras defeated devas many times, and they enjoyed their empire, they enjoyed their life as long as they lived. So that is fine. But the thing is, whether we want to stagnate at that stage. That's why even these devas, not only the asuras, the devas who considered the other aspects of the personality and were higher than these asuras, even they have to worship human being, because that signifies that the creator, or I mean, a human being is the greatest of all creation. That's why Shankaracharya said it is very, very difficult to get this human birth. And Thakur also, Sri Ramakrishna said, after having got this human birth, which is so rare to get, we have to strive for the highest, not be satisfied and become devas or these asuras. Asuras are anyway, it is very easy to become as long as we think the self is everything, this material world is everything. We are definitely asuras. So becoming an excellent asura, at the most we'll become an excellent demon, in the sense we become materially very strong and very powerful. But with death, everything ends. The Annamaya Kosha goes and then all the power goes away. But some people become intellectual giants, perhaps they are at the category or the level of the devas. So, but the wise people, according to Swamiji, they do not criticize this human body, because this human body enables them to do sadhana, but they use this human body not to aggrandize it, not to use it for uh, becoming more and more gross, but becoming more and more subtle. Because only when you are in this body and you are able to manipulate this prana, that the prana helps you to modify the nerve currents in the body, change your thoughts, and you can go higher and higher and become one with the consciousness and even get mukti, be free, be infinitely powerful as the Ishvara, who is far beyond all these things. So that's why Swamiji says this pranayama he discusses a lot, because most of us are very gross in our day-to-day life. So to become subtle, to come to the level of the mind, or to come to the level of the Vijnanamaya Kosha or even Anandamaya Kosha, which is not a very easy thing. Even to identify with that, we have to manipulate, or we have to handle this prana. So the engine of all our physical motion, which is the breath is not the only prana which is animating our body, but because it is something which is under our control, breathing assumes a very important role in our life. That's why Swamiji says, catch hold of this breath, regulate the breath. Very often it is done through pranayama for people who don't have faith, but for people who have faith in in an Ishta or a personal God, and if they are fortunate to be given a mantra by their guru, they use that mantra as a pranayama tool. Not just for pranayama, the many things they can get with the help of this one unique mantra. The constant repetition of this mantra will automatically uh, result in some kind of pranayama. They will control this prana, control the breath first. The breath will help them to control the nervous energy. The nervous energy will become stable in their body. And the very purpose of controlling the nervous energy is to first make the body healthy. That is just a byproduct. That's not the main reason. Swamiji is very careful to tell us that this pranayama can be used to strengthen our gross body. That is fine. That is a byproduct. But that should not be the main aim. Otherwise, we'll get stuck to the body. That's what the asuras did, in fact. The demonical people, they somehow caught hold of this pranayama. They were also very strong, and then they made their body very strong, and because they found that this yoga helps us to make the body strong, so we should do it. But the main purpose of controlling the prana is to make the nerve currents sensitive and use those nerve currents to control the mind. Because without controlling these nerve currents, your mind will be at the mercy of your fluctuating prana and the body. So somehow the yogi feels, Swamiji says, the yogi wants that his mind should be independent of his bodily condition. Even if the body is old, the body is weak, even if the prana is about to go away, even at that moment, the mind should not be affected, because the mind would have been strengthened so much that before a person leaves this body, he would have used all the spiritual techniques available to him, especially repeating of the mantra, prayers, and all those things, to strengthen his mind, to strengthen his prana, and allowing the prana to strengthen his mind by strengthening the nerve currents. So when he does that, when he uses that, he can control both the mind and the body. This prana is a vital link. So that's why Swamiji gives so much importance. And he gives a few hints. He says, have a separate room. When you meditate, when you even sit for yoga or do your sadhana, have a separate room. These are few practical hints which Swamiji is giving. Take fresh bath, because you know that when you take a warm shower, especially when everything is cold and you feel contracted, you feel lazy, you feel tamasic, a warm bath stimulates you, at least physically, to it freshens your mind. That's why you find in our tradition, especially in the Hindu tradition, they take bath sometimes 3 times before Sandhya Vandana. Before the early morning, when you get up, you take bath so that you can meditate properly. Again, if you have a chance in the afternoon, which is another sandhi between noon, that which happens at noon, people have a tendency, especially if you go to hot climates in India, people take bath after they come back and have their lunch. Before they have their lunch, they tend to take a fresh bath, do their worship, because they are supposed to do meditation at the junction of these day and night, which is early morning, between night before the day starts, the junction sandhi kala. It is known as the transition period. That is early in the morning when the sunrise. At sunrise, one is supposed to meditate. Then at noon, when the sun crosses normally at midday, when the sun starts waxing, it starts waning. It starts waxing after sunrise. Then afternoon again, it starts going down the horizon, and then you see the influence of the sun goes. Then you have dusk, and at dusk also, when sun sets, you again meditate. These are the 3. And even at midnight, when they say these are the 4 sandhi kalas, 24 hours have been divided. Normally, if the sunshine is for 12 hours, that's what we believe, sunset to sunrise. That happens only in the tropics. So we have these 4 sandhi kalas where we are supposed to meditate. So Swamiji says that whoever can meditate during this time, and especially we can burn flowers, incense, good, so that all your sense organs, if your prana is rejuvenated by a warm bath, do it. Anything that helps the mind to meditate properly, or even regulates the prana. So by repeating the mantra is one way to regulate the prana. Taking a bath, a warm shower, if it is cold, or a cold shower if it is very hot. You can even, in India, they prefer to take a cold shower or cold bath, so that it reduces the temperature. So the prana is again becomes normal. So there are these different forces within us which have to be controlled by externally also, and internally by repeating the mantra or meditation. What happens is these nerve currents come under control. Then you control both the body and the mind. And then Swamiji says you have to say some prayers, how to connect. Now this is a very important thing which is part of every sadhana. See, these spiritual practices are not meant for one's own self, to satisfy one's own. Definitely we would like to get moksha, but that is possible only when we are in touch with the universal prana. So that's why he says we have to pray. We have to begin our sadhana, our daily worship, or daily prayer, or daily meditation by a prayer, by some prayers which were known as universal prayers. We have this wonderful prayer, Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam, Karvavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. The Guru and the Shishya, they chant this prayer saying that let us be strong together, because it cannot be, it's not possible for anybody to be an island in this world. Everybody has to interact with the world. So in this universe, we have to be happy, you have to make others happy. That is the secret which Swamiji says people find it very difficult to accept in the beginning. But by repeated blows, Swamiji says, the only way to make yourself happy is to make others happy around you to the extent possible. So Swamiji says you begin your, sit in a quiet place where you are not disturbed, where your prana is not disturbed, where your body is not disturbed. You can do some kind of asana where your body remains steady, your spine remains erect. He had explained the asana also. Any asana which helps you to sit straight, keep the body, trunk, and the neck and the head straight, so that the spinal cord, the nervous energy which flows through the spine is regulated. So he says, sit straight, pray that all beings be happy, because your prana is definitely controlled by the prana of others. So if others are dejected, if you think of, if you are miserable, or if you think others, if you wish that others are miserable, their misery comes to you. So you catch those vibrations. It's a very, very simple psychological truth. If you tune to a station, you will get the music of that station. You can't expect to tune to BBC and get Voice of America. You can't get that. You have to tune to that particular. So if you want that you should be happy, you should tune to the happiness of all. So when you think of all beings, and if you imagine mentally, send those thought currents all over the world, to the left. That's why Swamiji says to the north, to the south, to all the directions you send vibrations. That means you are trying to tune with the good people of the world everywhere, and you are also trying to connect with the happy people so that you become pleasant and happy. So the only way, Swamiji says, to make yourself happy, make yourself peaceful, is to wish peace and happiness and share it with others, and try to tune with others who are happy. There are quite a few people, spiritual people in this world, who are in a state of joy, who are in a higher plane. And we have to tune with those beings. And some of them may not exist in the body, but they still exist. These wonderful saints and souls of the past who have not taken the body, who take the body only when it is necessary. These Avtara Purushas, Swamiji said, they still live. They exist in this universe. They have their prana, they have their all the other capacity to influence the prana and all the other things of humanity in a very big way. So by praying or by tuning ourselves by positive prayer, sending vibrations of happiness, joy all around, imagining that everybody is healthy, let everybody be strong, let everybody be happy. Then Swamiji says you have to imagine that this body is strong and steady, it is happy. That is another important aspect, because sending mental waves, that is very good as far as the mind is concerned. But what about the body? We need a strong body, not to dominate over others, but to do sadhana as healthy a condition as possible. So you have to imagine, you have to use the mind, you tell the prana to see that your body is strong, at least when you are doing your sadhana, so that most of the time it remains healthy and strong. Though health is not in our hand, there may be many infections, there may be so many things, but still mentally you can send those waves, tell the prana to be as stable as possible. The only reason being is that if the body is stable, then your prana is stable, then the mind can be stable. So the body is strong and happy, the mind is also strong and happy. So according to Sankhya, as I told you, Akasha is the primal form, which a part of which is our body, the physical body, which is part of the universal Akasha. And that primal Akasha from which it has come, the ether or the Akasha, the primal ether from which it has come, we can see it, perceive it. We can't see that primal Akasha. We can perceive it only when it becomes gross. Just as we have a subtle existence, we can't see ghosts. Some of them, of course, can see if they have this subtle insight. They can see spiritual beings. They can see departed souls. They can see great souls. They have visions of people who don't exist in their physical body anymore. But very often, normally, it is only when the beings become gross, when they assume a human body, we can see them. And we see them as bodies. We don't see them as spirit. We don't see them as minds. Though now and then we can get a glimpse of the subtle body behind this physical body. But the Akasha becomes visible only when it becomes gross. So there is a fine Akasha behind the universe, which we cannot see. But when it becomes matter, we see it. So also this prana. And this power of prana can be visible only through Akasha. So that's why Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha, when it becomes Parama Prakriti, we cannot see. Parama Prakriti has to manifest as this universe. Then we see ourselves as human beings. Then we see ourselves as minds, ourselves as prana. Then we start feeling everything. The dynamic power of Shiva is Shakti. So that's why the Akasha to the universe of senses which we see around us is because of the power of prana. So that is why prana assumes so much importance. Prana is something like Shakti is in tantras. Without the power of prana, Akasha remains unmanifest. It's when Akasha acts on prana, we find all these forces, gravitation, electricity, our own body forces, the body energy, the body heat, the body breath, all these things, the heart which is beating, the circulation, all these forces come into play when the prana acts on the body, the Annamaya Kosha. As long as the prana is in connection with the body, it is alive. The moment the prana departs, for some reason, you pronounce that person as dead. He still exists as a body. We bury him or burn him, that is fine. We cremate him. The body may remain, but it is no longer acted upon by prana. And it just becomes dead inert matter and becomes one with the other constituents, the proteins it becomes one with the nature or the gross universe. The gross body merges into that, and the prana and the other subtle senses, the subtle mind and all those buddhi and all those things, samskaras, the causal body, they transmigrate till they get another body. So that's why Swamiji says, by controlling this prana, we should not focus more on controlling this body. We use the body to control the prana and the mind, to train the prana to control the mind, to do pranayama, control the mind, to do all our activities, including prayer, meditation, japa and all those things. We use our prana to do these things so that we can control the mind before we leave the body. Otherwise, as we discussed in the gospel class, we cannot possibly have the mind in that state to merit a good body in the next birth. If we have been predominantly body consciousness, it is more likely that we are born as worldly people in the next birth also. But if we have been able to transcend our physical limitations and identify ourselves more and more with our intellect, our buddhi, then there is a chance that you will be born in as someone who will make immediate spiritual progress as soon as he is born. Perhaps that inclination to become spiritual will be there in the childhood itself. So you are born with that advantage. So nothing is lost according to Gita. Sri Krishna says, whatever yoga you do, whatever sadhana, yoga bhrashta means one dies before attaining to the goal of yoga. what will happen? Arjuna asked this question. I'll do yoga, I'll do everything. But what if suddenly I lose this body? What will happen? Sri Krishna says nothing is lost, because whatever you have done to identify yourself with the higher aspects of your personality, they will remain as samskaras. Whatever you have invested in enhancing the lower aspects of your personality, they will be reduced to dust. That you will lose. The money you got, the physical strength you got, that may go. You may not get it. You may have to be born again as a child and again develop those things, again collect money. You can't expect that the money you saved in this birth, you will be able to use it in the next birth. You can't do it. You have to just leave it behind. So that's why Sri Krishna says any practice of yoga where you have invested your energy and prana to develop your mind and higher aspects of your buddhi and other aspects of your personality, they are not going to be lost. If you have not got mukti in this life, you will be born with an annamaya kosha, with a body which will help facilitate you to continue what you did in your previous birth. So that investment, that energy which you use, that prana which you use to develop the mind is never lost. Whereas the prana, like the asuras, like the demons, if you invest that prana in aggrandizing your lower self, the body, that will be lost the moment you die. So the choice is ours. So Sri Krishna, so Sri Swamiji says, the knowledge of this prana is very important, either to make the body strong and make you a demon or an asura, or in either case prana is necessary. If you choose to become great in the world and be happy with that and die and everything exhausts after death, you great in the sense you become powerful and wealthy, and all those things are finished when you leave the annamaya kosha. But the same prana, if you direct it towards the mind, it goes and opens the door to infinite knowledge. It gives you power over, not only power over your own nature, your own personality, but also over other personalities, which we see in the power of prophets. These prophets did not influence or wield so much power over others just like that. You see the power of the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Even today, those words have this power. They have left long ago, they have left the annamaya kosha, but their influence grows stronger and stronger. The power of behind Jesus Christ, the power behind people who use their prana, enhance their prana to become one with the Spirit. So when Jesus Christ realized himself as the Spirit, even if his body was crucified, he became more and more powerful, and is continuing to influence whole humanity even today. That is true in case of all the prophets, with Krishna, with Ramakrishna, with Vivekananda, all these people who cultivated that prana, made it so strong and made their minds and then transcended it. They used their prana to influence the small pranas of different human beings, not only when they were living, but even after they continued. They continue to exist in a subtle form, that Ramakrishna form or the Jesus form or the Vivekananda form. They are not imagination. They are not figment of imagination. They are still there. Only thing is they are disembodied and they don't have a body. They don't have a physical body. But for that reason, they are not less powerful. They are more powerful because before they died, they identified with all the higher levels and even transcended them. I mean the Jiva Kotis. Avataras, of course, they were never caught in the Annamaya Kosha. They were never imprisoned in the koshas at all. They just did this as a drama, a divine leela, just to show how sadhakas can rise beyond their body level and go to higher and higher levels. So this is why prana, the use of prana in a positive way, is the topic of the next two talks, on 2 or 3 maybe. We have to deal with these things. I'm going a bit slow because when you read this Raj Yoga, I was also wondering why Swamiji has given so much importance to this prana. He has not discussed so much about asana, not even pratyahara, dharana. Of course, dhyana, when it comes to the sutras, he has discussed a lot. But I was wondering why he is giving, because he knows that we begin with this prana And unless a very clear idea of what this prana is, it is not just breath. He makes it clear that don't think, be under the illusion that pranayama is control of breath. Breath is just a very, very small aspect of it. But there are many ways of controlling this prana and enhancing the quality of your life, using it, unlike the asuras, to enhance your mind rather than the body, a mind and the higher faculties of human personality than the body, which most of the yoga, the efforts in yoga all over the world is to use pranayama to enhance the capabilities of your senses and the body. That is what yoga is all about. In 99% of the cases, very, very few people use this pranayama for controlling their mind and going to higher and higher levels. Somehow the body comes into the picture and then they get stuck. And that is what the asuras did. So this is a great lesson which we learned today, as when they go to the creator, because the creator told the asuras and the devas that the body is the self, one category of people will always think, a majority of the people will think the body is everything. But some wise people will think that body may be the self, but there are higher selves. They go again and again to the creator, to Brahma, and the devas progressively understood that body is the mind, the body is the prana, the self is the, not the body, the self is the not only the body, but also the prana, but also then they understood it is mind, it is buddhi, it is the Anandamaya Kosha, and finally it is far transcendental, and they identified with the consciousness which was mukti. So we will come back to this topic. If there are some questions we can have, we have already exceeded the time. Now let us have some few questions based on what we discussed. So I'll unmute, if you raise your hands, I'll go to the gallery view now. I had to discuss this prana in great detail. Again, maybe it sounds like repetition, but we forget the essentials of that. And the reason why Swamiji discussed this idea of prana in 3 chapters now is getting more and more clearer to me as we read the Raj Yoga. I think I have sent you the PDF file of Raj Yoga. If I have not sent it, I'll send it today. And I wish that all of you just keep track with what is being discussed in the class and read the original also now and then. Because if you read the original, then you will get an idea of the continuity, why Swamiji has discussed this idea of prana over such a long, 3 sections of this Raj Yoga. Yes. So you'll get a much clearer idea. Now and then you may forget what I discussed in the class, so you go back, just have a cursory glance on what is written in the book Raj Yoga, because it is a seriously written book by Swamiji. He has left this book, he wrote this book. In fact, unlike other lectures, he specifically wrote this book, got it written, he dictated, so that a very concrete manual for spiritual practices is left for everybody to follow in the West as well as in the East. Okay, so you can ask if somebody has any question, you can just raise your hand. Right now, I'm not seeing any raised hand in the participants, but if there is somebody, yeah, Amit. Okay.
Namaste, Swamiji. That was really good. I really got a lot out of it today's session. I had a question. We're talking about using pranayama to move away from the body as such and go higher. My particular individual problem is certain addictions that I may have, like my phone or tea or anything like that, which distracts me from focusing. And obviously my mindset, as you know, I have a certain mindset, and I find it hard to sit and focus or sit and do some types of meditation. And even mantra, for me, 1 round can be enough a lot of the times. So what am I to do in this to expand away from addictions to things that keep, like my phone hooks me. How do I get away from that? And how do I focus on the more important things? And I know they're important, but
You see, addictions are habits, isn't it? Addiction is nothing but a habit. What do you mean by addiction? You do it repeatedly, it becomes addiction. If you do meditation regularly, you become addicted to meditation. Addiction is not bad, only thing it is misdirected, isn't it? So if you addict yourself to good things, the bad things will automatically fall away from you. So the thing is, phone may not be the only addiction you have. We have the greatest addiction we have is our addiction to our body. See, 24 hours of our day, how many times do we think that we are not just the body, we are something higher? It's only during meditation, it is only during deep thinking, only when you are reading something very deeply, or maybe you are enjoying some scene, you tend to forget the body. Otherwise, 90 times the mind is reminding you again and again that you are the body, you are the body, you have to keep it fit, you have to keep it beautiful, you use makeup, you use so many things to think about the body. So it's not that the body asks you to think of it, you are addicted to the body. That's the idea. So getting yourself addicted to the phone or something else is not a serious problem as you think. The main problem is getting addicted to the body itself. You see, we are addicted to food, we are addicted to so many things. We try to keep our body fit and trim. No doubt it's a good thing, but then you tend to get addicted. Some people, they just don't know, they're fitness freaks. They practically spend their whole time to be fit for what? If they are more or less fit, then they should focus more. It's nice if they focus on mental fitness as well. So that is what addiction does. It makes a habit of whatever you do. See, if you do some things repeatedly, it results in addiction. The only way not to do it is to do something else. If you pray more, if you meditate more, then you will be using the phone less. It's a simple thing. It's like teaching a kindergarten child. If you are busy with drawing, then you will not be doing mischief. So what do we do with children? To de-addict them with certain things like mobile games. Nowadays children are so much addicted to the games. So you have to give them something else. You have to make them addicted to good things to divert them from bad things. So that is the only way. Addiction is nothing but habits. So just as bad habits are formed, good habits also can be formed. Both are equally addictive. You got my point. So now I think you got the hint that don't worry about your mobile addiction and all. They are not as serious as your addiction. That one is the body. Everybody of us, we are addicted. We are addicted, and that is the most serious addiction which we have to get rid of and think that we are the spirit before we leave the body. Otherwise, we will feel a lot of pain when we have to leave this body behind. Why do you people fear death? Because they are so addicted to the body, they don't want to leave it. You are addicted to smoking. The very idea that you have to stop smoking gives you a lot of fear or pain, that you have to give up drinking, you have to give up smoking. People, they are addicted to these things. The very thought makes them shudder, isn't it? So these addictions are nothing but habit, and it can be easily got rid of by cultivating better habits. That's the only way. So the yoga is, what is yoga? Yoga is creating positive and better habits to get rid of old habits. You destroy the old samskaras. You don't destroy, you make it so weak that they don't cease to trouble you, and you make the positive samskaras stronger and stronger. Okay? So you want to ask something further? There are two more people. Okay.
Oh, no,
you can come. You can.
Okay. I really like the how you mentioned the technique, like having a warm bath, using incense, etc. And obviously I do those things anyway. But one thing that I don't have is the private places to pray because my house isn't big enough and my east direction won't allow me to
No,
go.
no, no. Direction is, don't be very particular. Anytime you don't have to face, you either face the deity or you face east. You cannot possibly change the place once you have fixed the deities in front of you. If you have a corner of for yourself, you can't get corners everywhere. That depends on
No.
the structure of the house. So don't
Yeah.
bother about east or west or north or south. If you can have it, it is fine. We should face sitting the east or the north. But if you cannot, then don't unnecessarily bother you. The more important thing is that you should focus your mind. But if naturally, without disturbing your position of your shrine, if you can sit facing the north or facing the east, it is fine. That's all. That is one thing. And why do you want a separate room? You can sit in the corner of your room.
Yeah, it's just there's no quiet space. Like there's no, it's just one whole room. See, so
Oh, that's
what?
fine. But when you sit for meditation, I don't think anybody comes and physically disturbs you.
I've got two kids.
Oh yeah, they are there, but you can ask them to play. You can meditate when they are.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I'll
Okay,
ask.
Swamiji.
Yeah, Purnima, you can ask. Yes, I've unmuted you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. In Raja Yoga, Swami Vivekananda has described all these techniques and everything. That is in principle to transcend all the five koshas and to possibly to come in to the true consciousness or whatever.
Yes, yes.
But at the same time, there are several meditation techniques and other things. People can achieve higher control over mind, and can they do something right or wrong with that, or how does these things, because there is something called tantra also, and I have not
Yeah. No, the Raj Yoga is one method. Swamiji never says that the Raj Yoga is the only way. In fact, he speaks of 4 different yogas. You can achieve the same thing through Karma Yoga as well, because Karma Yoga also involves mental control of the prana. When you do the work, your prana is getting influenced. So also Bhakti Yoga, when you are praying, when you are singing devotional songs, when you are doing the practices of Bhakti also, you will see that the prana is directly or indirectly getting influenced. So also with Jnana also. Jnana, when you do, you forcibly take your mind, use your prana, use your effort. Prana means effort. You use your efforts to take your mind to a very high Vijnanamaya Kosha level and try to intensely think of higher thoughts. That is also a kind of pranayama is going on. It's not only through Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga is the scientific explanation of how spirituality happens in your life. Just gives you an idea, the scientific structure of spirituality. It shows you how you can scientifically identify yourselves with higher and higher levels of your personality. That's all. From Annamaya Kosha, how you go up, how you focus on the mind. So you start with asana, we do pranayama, you do pratyahara, dharana. These steps you will find there in all the other yogas as well, in an indirect way. But for convenience, we say, so there are other methods like Buddhist methods are there, Vipassana is there. So Christianity is there, Islam is there. There are different techniques and prayers and methods of worship, which include faith also sometimes, where the focus is on somehow what happens is, Swamiji says, the prana becomes stronger and stronger, whether Muhammad knew it or not, whether any Christ knew it or not, everybody used the same method. It's not that in one religion one method was there. They may not have used the word prana, but all these major religions, they have used this technique. This technique automatically happens. Their prana becomes strong, their mental thoughts become strong, they animate a large multitude of people in different ways. They influence. Christ influenced in one way, Muhammad influenced in one way, Krishna influenced people in one way, Ramakrishna is influencing people in another way. So all of them are using different techniques. Buddha influenced people in a different way. But according to Swamiji, in all the cases, consciously or unconsciously, they were making their own prana strong, and in the process, they were controlling the prana which is there in others and influencing them. So it really doesn't matter which method you use for controlling the mind. You know, the techniques are all can be equally powerful if there is a right person to guide you. I mean, you can't follow a Buddhist technique unless there is somebody who has traversed that path and is sure of the technique. You know, you can't just get these things by reading books. There are other paths. To know Tantra, you have to be a master of that Tantra, which is not possible without somebody who knows that. Just like you can't study physics, nuclear physics, under a biologist. You have to go to a nuclear physicist, isn't it? So, to understand that technique, you have to go to that person or that expert who is a master of that particular. That is the most difficult task, to get the right person to teach you the practical aspects. I mean, for theoretically understanding, you can just join British Library and get all the books and understand. But that will give you an intellectual understanding, that will give you an information that there are for 500,000 ways of meditating. Every human being evolves his own technique, and he can write a book on his own technique. And depending on how successful it is, it will become popular and it will die a natural death. There are some gurus or some techniques which have lasted for some time, and with the death of the founder, those techniques have vanished. But there are certain religious practices, there are certain spiritual practices with which a lot of universal prana was attached. So when Jesus, when Krishna, when all these great prophets, when they preached certain techniques, they did not just give intellectual thoughts, they gave it the force of their prana. We'll come to that topic when we discuss prana. Swamiji says that they somehow managed to touch or establish a connection with the universal prana, and that universal prana gave them tremendous force, and it gave them tremendous, it gave their words, their ideas, their thoughts so much force that it is influencing men even today. So it does not, it depends on the source. So you have to be careful just to find out if any meditation technique, whatever you do, how is it connected to the original source. If you say it is a Buddhist sect, you try to find out how it is connected to the Buddhist tradition, whether it is genuinely connected or whether somebody who has just intellectually read Buddhism and started a technique and he has given it to the world, it will die very soon. It won't, because he is not connected in any Buddhistic tradition. He has not been in touch with the tradition started by Buddha. So also with other religions, so also with the different sects of Hinduism. You know, that's why they take so much of pains to maintain this Guru Parampara, Guru or the teacher Parampara, the teacher, the lineage. Even in Oxford and Cambridge, you take the department, any department, starting with Charles Darwin or even before that, you see that their department has a series of teachers who have learnt in a traditional way. They just learnt under somebody who was a master of that subject, and he learnt it from him. He did not learn it on the streets. So the Guru tradition is extremely important, and it is extremely dangerous to follow some technique which has no tradition behind it. We can follow it, but if unfortunately the person who started it is not connected to any tradition, you will go and have a dead end. It is like coming to a dead end, to a dead stop somewhere. You take the car and then you find you have come to a dead end. You have to reverse then. It will take a lot of time. So just be careful. Any tradition is good, provided it has links with the founder of that tradition, and the founder should be somebody of the level of prophets or incarnation. That is makes it safer. If you have Yes.
I am not interested, but generally we hear about various people, anybody coming with various techniques and teaching and establishing.
Yeah, that's the problem. Everybody is, yeah.
That is why I was like,
No, that is the problem. There is a super abundance of choices now. You see, everybody in every street wants to become a guru. I mean, he without following a tradition, he tries to break away even from his own guru. You see, there are so many teachers in the West who went from India. They started their tradition. Their disciples, very often Western disciples or even other disciples, they just took over from their guru, and then they started what they call their own tradition. They refused even to acknowledge the continuity. If they break off at such a within one generation, if they break off, then you can imagine what will happen to their disciples and the successful, and maybe somebody will start another tradition, and then the original teaching, there is no Buddhism, or though they claim there may be Buddhism or connected to Hinduism or Sufism or any ism, they may say, because they have taken those basic texts, but are they connected? If they can't even show connection between beyond their own gurus or maybe their own teachers. Some of them are self-taught, and still they claim that these things, spirituality cannot, just like any other serious subject, you cannot do it on your own. Very, very rarely, like people like Jesus, people are incarnations, they come with that spiritual quality inherent in them. They can manage, but even they would have taken some guru, some tradition. Sri Ramakrishna never broke the tradition. He took Totapuri, he took all the different gurus of different sects just to show the importance of following a particular tradition. So that's why I'm saying you can see, definitely you can see many people thriving for some time, but most of them you'll find have a very, very short life, shelf life. They won't, their books will become bestsellers for a few years, and the next year you will find some other book has become a bestseller, and they have their popularity as long as, I mean, in terms of numbers, you will see they have a huge following, but somehow it is not sustainable. You won't hear after them after say 50, 100 years when they go away. As long as they are there, they're pushing their ideas. There are people, there are public relation officers who do that. They have a very good structure. See, it is like running a business, in the world also, with your important people around you, you can even make a fool the CEO of a company if the assistants are good enough. He can become a CEO. He may be doing nothing, but they can project him, and if they are clever enough, they can create. But that happens in the world. It does not happen in spiritual pursuits. In the spiritual pursuits, you have to be genuine. You can't just fool around and get away with it. Okay?
One more,
Yes.
you said that like avatar purushas and mahan purushas, like say Raman Maharshi, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and all these people, they exist and they can communicate. Is that true? That can it happen?
Yeah, because you see, they were not limited by their physical bodies even when they were alive. So when they are not there, the influence, the subtle, see, this is the main idea of being spiritual. Do you think Jesus has gone? The spirit of Jesus is still alive. So they exist as spirits because they, even when they were alive, they could influence the spirits, the higher aspects of personalities of their sadhakas, their devotees who came in contact with them, even ordinary people, even criminals, they could change by their touch. These prophets had that power to change the personality of sinners. Saul became Paul, Saint Paul. That was after Jesus Christ was crucified. Saul saw him as a great bright light, and he was going to collect some tax money, and he was a very evil person. So Saul, the tax collector, becomes Saint Paul. So that influence is still there. Otherwise, how would he follow Jesus Christ after he? And what about other followers of Krishna? Now, Mirabai definitely was not born when Krishna was there. but she saw Krishna. She lived, her whole life was a total dedication to Krishna, whom she never saw physically in the beginning. But later on, he became more real than the real Krishna. She never felt that he was not existing. So they live in ideas, they live in their spirit, they live, even they can influence your prana at the pranamaya kosha, because anything that is subtle can understand and realize these people. What do you mean by vision? Real vision, when you see God or these personalities as spirits, and they help you as spirits in the spiritual world. They can't help you, they can even help you physically also, because for them gross is just an extension of the spirit. They don't need a body to manifest their spirit. Like human beings, they are not like us. We need a body to do sadhana. We after we give up the body, we have to take up another body. There is some interim period according to the transmigration theory, but we have to take up another body, allow the body to grow, and then when it is sufficiently old, we start our sadhana again in some different form. So that spirituality is not lost, especially in the case of incarnations. They grow, they continue to influence people. So they are very much there, more alive than us. We
So
are
we,
alive.
so we can ask one of these people like Shankaracharya to be my guru or something like that.
You can, if you can communicate with him, if you are devoted enough to him. That this, if you see, Sri Ramakrishna's first guru was Ma Kali only. He got his physical gurus only later on. His first realization was, but a very few can become like Sri Ramakrishna, who can go without a human guru. Because what he did was, he considered Ma Kali and then prayed and pleaded and did so much of intense sadhana that Ma Kali had to appear physically and then give him the blessings and give him the realization. Then he prayed to Ma Kali that I want to realize God through other paths of Hinduism. So Vaishnava gurus came, Tantra gurus came, Christian gurus came. So somebody or the other came and taught him all these different, but they were physical gurus, but he did not need them. As Sri Ramakrishna, he did not need them. But I am not very sure if we belong to that category, or a category which doesn't require a guru. If it is there, you don't have to. You can directly have God as your guru, and if you are sincere enough. But then one has to understand that Ishta, or fix your devotion or allegiance to one particular guru. You can't change gods like you change objects. You don't change gods like you change cars. You may change the cars, you may change worldly objects, you can even change the people around you, but you can't change the Ishta. Otherwise you won't get any, because that Guru Parampara, whether you follow a human guru or you follow a divine guru, you have to stick to somebody. If you don't stick, then there is no chance for spiritual progress, because the intensity depends on your Ishta Nishtha. Ishta means that which you like. The Ishta, the God whom you like, you have to fix your allegiance or your faith or your devotion to one particular aspect and then go after it. Whether it is Shankaracharya, you can't just be taking a little bit of everybody and hope to make progress. That's why this intensity is required. A liberal attitude is required, so that you don't hate others. You don't. But then, like Tulsidas said, Haji Haji karte rahiye, baithiye apne tham. Means, say yes to everybody, but don't leave your seat. I mean, don't go on changing your seat every day. Fix your seat. Always sit on your seat only, but say yes to all others who have their own seats, who have their own gurus. You say yes to them. You don't have to come in conflict with them. But don't think that by leaving your seat, you will make any progress. Your chances of progress is to sticking to your faith. So now I'll answer one more question. Subroto is asking. Subroto Gupta, yes. Yes.
Pranam Guruji.
Yes, namaste.
Namaste. I had one question. You were talking about pranayama and breath being one way, one form of pranayama.
No, breath is the initial thing which you practice, breath control, to do pranayama. It is one of the steps in pranayama. It is breath control is just the beginning, you can say, to do pranayama. That's what I said.
So okay. So if we're chanting the mantra internally, because you say sometimes we should chant quietly.
Yes. Sometimes, every time it is the mind which chants. And yes. So what of that?
So how can we control the breath if we're chanting internally?
See, today you do one thing for half an hour, just isolate yourself and do your japa or the mantra which you have received from your guru mentally in a rhythmic way. Just remember, don't do it either fast or slow. If you select a particular speed, you continue doing, repeating that name in a particular speed for a very long period of time, say half an hour. Or even if you don't meditate, don't bother about meditating right now, just to show how it controls your breath. If you observe carefully, if you are very, very sensitive and repeat the mantra without getting disturbed for say 15 minutes also, you will find that if you have some device to measure breath, I don't know, you can even use the medical devices, but otherwise you will find the breath very automatically. It is doing pranayama without you knowing it. Without your knowledge, you are doing pranayama if you are rhythmically breathing. When you do pranayama, your mind waves become rhythmic. So if your mind waves are rhythmic, they result in pranayama. So it is either way. You do pranayama to control your mind, or you control your mind to do pranayama. It is the same thing. So in effect, japa helps you. In fact, they say if you do japa properly in a rhythm, in a very steady rhythm without being disturbed, that is the best form of pranayama, because you not only control your breath, but you control the second step also, that is controlling your nerve currents. The control of breath is only to control your nerve currents in the spine. So that will happen anyway. When you do your japa continuously, the nerve currents are controlled, the breath is controlled, then your kundalini starts. I mean, the nervous energy which flows through the spine passes, and it elevates your personality. It helps you to identify with higher and higher aspects of yourself. You begin with the heart center, and when you go up, it takes you to higher and higher planes. You pass the manomay kosha, you become one with the vijnanamay kosha, and it can take you very often to higher levels also. So this nervous energy control, by controlling the breath, which you control by doing japa, is the same thing. So you begin with your mental japa. That japa or that mantra controls rhythmic, but it has to be rhythmic. You can't do japa, say 100 japa in 1 minute and then suddenly do 200 japas. You don't change the speed. You have to maintain a single rhythm and gradually increase. If you need, you can even increase the speed, but do it very, very gradually. Say it in a very unhurried way. That is how japa should be done. So you try that and see how it controls your breath. You will find that it's automatically, it's very naturally controlling your breath without holding the nose like this and breathing in, breathing out. That is only for people who don't have any such thing to hold on to. If you are lucky, if you have a japa, then pranayama becomes very natural. Otherwise, you have to artificially do it under the guidance. But even there, they say you need a pranayama guru. So you have to search for one guru who is a specialist in pranayama, in breathing techniques, and who has used it to control his mind, and he is a real yogi. I'm not talking of breath experts who help you to control your body and increase your health. That you will find in thousands. You can even get it on internet also. But I am talking of the real pranayama people who control their breath to control their minds. So unless you have a guru, you will have a problem there also, because you don't, sometimes you get the control, you don't know what to do with the prana which you are controlling. It goes out of control, and it can create some kind of havoc in the mind also, because the prana not only affects the body, it can affect the mind. The mind will suddenly become highly elevated and suddenly go into depression, and you will find why the mind is fluctuating so much. People don't realize that is because they have practiced pranayama without the proper guidance. So the safest way is to stick to the mantra which is given by the guru and repeat it in a rhythmic way, and whatever pranayama happens is more than enough for the person who is doing it. Okay, you don't have to do it separately.
Thank you, Guruji.
Okay, thank you. One more last question Gopa is asking. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, please. Gopa, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Please ask.
Shamiji, you probably haven't got much time. My question is, I have great admiration for Vivekananda from very young age, because I am at awe of the things he has done by that time he was only 39 years old. Do we get to learn from him his techniques, how to raise your prana kosha towards higher level in the next lecture?
It is there in Raj Yoga. Yes, yes. No, not the pranayam kosha as such. The prana is used to identify. Kosha is just an idea which I gave you from Vedanta, though he directly doesn't state these things. To make it easy, I just told you. But pranayama, or the control of prana, affects, I mean, what it does is it takes you, your identification from Annamaya kosha to Pranamaya kosha to higher and higher levels till you become free. That he will discuss. They will definitely discuss in the psychic prana, which is the next chapter. So what I'll do is I'll send you the book. If you are in want to read it before hearing the lectures, you can do it and read some chapters earlier, so that you can understand what he has said after 2 or 3 chapters. You can go ahead of what is being discussed and then come back for a detailed explanation and ask questions. So I am going to definitely deal with that. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. You know, my childhood is from North India, so my Ishta has always been Ram.
Yeah.
And then, and I concentrated that. But I do not have a guru. Does it matter?
That depends. Now, if you have devotion, as Purnima also asked this question, if you have devotion to Rama and if you consider Rama himself as your guru, and if you are devoted enough, then, because ultimately all the gurus are Sachidananda, they are these incarnations, and God himself is the guru, the supreme guru. But if you have faith in Rama and if you feel that he can act as your guru, you don't need a human guru, you can go ahead. There's no harm. But if you just insist on having a Rama mantra, then you have to search for a guru who can give you that Rama mantra. You see, it is necessary to follow a tradition. There are Ramayati sadhus who in India who might give you a mantra which helps you to accept Rama as an Ishta. So you can do that. But it is difficult. I mean, they should belong to a tradition of Rama worshippers. Like Sri Ramakrishna's parents, they were followers of Rama. Their Ishta was Rama. That is why everybody's name began with Rama. So you can, that's why when we do utter the mantra of Ramakrishna, we include Rama, Krishna, Devi, everybody is Sarva Deva Devi Swarupa. So any person having any Ishta can have Sri Ramakrishna as the Ishta, because he practiced all religions. So he was a prophet. Otherwise, if you want to go meditate according to Rama's tradition, or you want the Rama mantra specifically with Rama as an Ishta, the Ramachandra of Ramayana, I mean, then you have to
Yes.
go to a guru if you want a guru, or directly pray to Rama. Both are, I mean, okay. But if you are confident enough that Rama will respond to your prayers, and you can do that, that is also fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Swami.
Surendra, I'm just unmuting Amita. Amita had raised her hand. Yeah.
Mute.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. You unmuted me now, Maharaj.
Yeah. You asked the question. You raised your hand. I remember.
I did, but I thought you ran out of time, so I lowered
No,
my hand.
no. I am free. Unless you run out of time, I am
No,
free.
no, that's all right, because you said I will take one last question, and I.
No. There is Vayu also waiting. So you finish first. Yeah.
Maharaj, I was just thinking just now. You know, the other gentleman, the young man, Shuvratta Gupta, was asking you, and you told him, why don't you sit and do your japa rhythmically for some time, and automatically the rhythm of the breath will also come.
Yes.
You don't
No,
have to
just to
stop.
see the connection. He was asking, how can one do pranayama while repeating the mantra? I said, you try and test, so that you don't have to believe in anybody. But because you won't find this in Raja Yoga as such, because Raja Yoga deals with pure yoga. But if you see the teachings of Brahmananda, Shivananda, and all the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, many people asked them this question: teach us something about pranayama. People were very curious. Pranayama was something very exciting, and they went to these gurus. They were all gurus. I mean, after Swami Vivekananda, Brahmananda, even while Swami Vivekananda was alive, Brahmananda gave a lot of diksha to many people. So whenever they were asked this question, to learn some pranayama from him, from Brahmananda, from Premananda, all the direct disciples advised most of the disciples, unless they found that they could really learn some pranayama, they said, why don't you repeat the mantra? It will give you everything. It will give you devotion. It will give you yoga. It will give you bhakti. It will do everything for you if you do it in the right spirit. And in one place, I remember, I can even give you the exact quote also. Swami Sarvasthananda has explained beautifully that how rhythmic repetition of the mantra results in breath control, pranayama. Somebody was very much interested in pranayama, asked that question, and Swami Sarvasthananda explained to him. He also explained how the kundalini rises. So everything what I told Subroto today was based on Swami Sarvasthananda's explanation of how mantra yoga can be combined with Raj Yoga of Swamiji. Because Swamiji did not take the class on, because he was not talking to formal initiated disciples. He was talking in the West. For people who did not have any idea of mantra yoga, who were not expected even to have a guru, or they just were beginners. They just wanted to know what this yoga is all about. So for such people, the idea of prana should be in a very, very liberal, in a very, you can't say. So he gave some 2 breathing techniques, which we will come to later, where he says breathe deeply inside and breathe deeply outside, because he knew they didn't have any mantra to meditate on. And he knew that they would not even try to have a mantra in their whole life, or om or something. They were not faith devoted enough to, approach a guru for that. So he knew, knowing that, he said, either you do it, but for those who have the benefit of a guru given mantra, according to the direct disciples, it is one a very practical and a sound way, or a very effective way of not doing pranayama directly, but doing it indirectly as a byproduct of repeating the mantra. That's the idea. So it comes automatically. Then why should you spend time in first doing pranayama and then doing mantra? It's not necessary. That's the idea. So that's what I told. Is that your question?
Yeah, mine was a little follow on from there, and I was
Okay.
just saying that, you know, when you're done with this or at an appropriate time of your Raj Yoga classes, you could even give us a demonstration that we could do. You know how you do relaxation techniques or something? So you could do a general mantra, we would repeat after you, and we could do that. If you can think of something on that practical lines, or later on, please.
Yes. No, we could do it. Only thing is, you see, it cannot be the Diksha mantra. It has to be a general
No,
mantra.
we are not thinking of that at all. Any
Yeah.
general mantra, or just Om for
Yeah.
itself. But
Yeah.
then in that case, you can do it for a little amount of time. Then there could be that pace, and we can all get into it. We repeat after you, and we all know what you mean. We know then we get into rhythmic breathing also. It's
Yes.
just an idea, so I wanted to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. No, it's a good idea. And only thing is, when you repeat it, for at least for that particular session, that is not the advice I would give people who have
No,
taken Diksha,
You're
because
giving us an idea of what to do.
yeah, just to demonstrate that the breathing, so they have to observe the breath also, so that they get an idea, or maybe at least they should feel how their breathing pattern is changing when they do it. So maybe we'll have to do it for say 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and the people who are sensitive enough will observe, and then perhaps they may agree or they may not agree, depending on how rhythmic their mind was. You see, it is not just the physical repetition. I may repeat with somebody physically. That's what happens with 90% of the people, who sing this Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This mass kirtan which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started. The idea was that only, that it should be rhythmic. And they even play the rhythm, they play the manjira, and they do all sorts of wonderful things. They can be really good. But the problem is, when these people sing it loudly, perhaps they don't mentally repeat the same thing. Mentally, they are thinking of their property, their assets, and other things. But physically, they are participating in the kirtan, but their mind is on something else. So then the pranayama doesn't happen. You see, otherwise, everybody who's singing a nice song, a very rhythmic song, even good singers, they can control their breath. Their breath has to be controlled, otherwise they can't sing properly in a rhythm. So it will be like a singer whose mind is somewhere else, but the vocal cords are singing. So that danger is there. That's why right from beginning, the Guru instructs the disciple not to repeat the mantra loudly, in the sense it will not ensure, but mental repetition has to be concentrated. There is no other way. Either you repeat, your mind can see whether you are thinking some other thoughts or you are repeating the mantra. You can't do both at the same time. Whereas in loud repetition, what happens is you are repeating in a very beautiful rhythm. And sometimes when we hear these wonderful singers, who are just singing in a beautiful pattern, but if you measure or if you see their mind, it may be going somewhere else. I mean, it may be totally busy with their own problems at home. They are so trained that their vocal cord, they'll turn out an excellent piece of music. But real singers, they take music as sadhana. They are mentally one with that song also. So we'll do it. We'll definitely try it. But my request would be that it should only if the mental repetition is supporting the physical repetition, then the prana can be, the breath control can be pursued.
Excellent, Maharaj. Just a suggestion. That's what came across. Thank you, Maharaj.
Fine. So last question, Vayu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Last but not the least. Yes, please.
Pranam Maharaj, and thank you, Amita, also for that question. Maharaj, thank you for the talk today. Just a couple of things. One is a small practical thing. You did give us the Raja Yoga book. What are the chapters you'd like us to just be mentally prepared with for next session? I was
the first chapter on prana. The three sections are there.
3 sections, no?
First
Till
section I'm
38.
going, yeah, first section is still going on. There,
Yeah.
these two stories are there of
Yeah.
the Asuras and the Devas going to Brahma, and the other
Yeah.
story of the king. So that we have already completed. So you can read after that.
Okay, so
There
that's
is
the
one
actual
psychic
prana
prana.
yoga chapter.
Yeah. There is the universal
Okay.
prana and there is the psychic prana. So
Okay.
Swamiji has made a distinction between prana as a natural force in the universe and prana as the psychic prana. Psychic prana means that which is connected with your body and your spinal cord and the nervous currents. That is psychic. When you say psychic prana, that means that which changes your mind. So psychic prana is different from prana which affects your body. See, you have to make a distinction, and Swamiji makes that distinction. Though one affects the other, the purpose of one is not the purpose of other. You got my point? When you deal with the psychic prana, it affects you in a different way. When you do deal with the other prana which influences the body, it makes your body healthy. That's all.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just
Yes.
a subsidiary question.
Yes.
I have seen people who practice the, sort of body prana to be strong and good breathing and to avoid sort of dermatological diseases and so on.
Aging,
And
old
they're
age, aging also it helps. It
but
helps.
I have seen some people, and one person I have noticed who cannot control their temper. And
I mean,
Please
so I'm
continue. Just wondering how, at what stages are we also watching our breathing? Because obviously these are people with a lot of energy, but sometimes the volition with what they can speak or hurt other people, because the whole thing is to start with the mantra, as Swamiji says, you mean peace for everybody, north, south, east, west, evoking mercy, kindness, compassion, all goodwill to everybody for this to have effect. So I don't know, maybe on another session, just something so we keep on the straight and narrow, and what are some of the side effects,
I'll quickly answer you. The person, whoever he is or she is, when you said that you can't use prana for both, I mean, you can use it for some time to enhance your physiological processes, stop aging. There are many functions it can do. You may feel that it is some kind of miracle, but it is a very effective way of slowing the aging process. The mere regulation of prana or breath, not pranayama, but regulation of breath, can cause wonderful changes in the body because of the regular oxygen intake and you exhale carbon dioxide in a very rhythmic manner. That will immediately change many things in your physiological system. So that is nothing to be wondered at. Most of them are practicing and getting the benefits. Let them do it. It's fine. But that will not ensure that the pranayama is helping their minds. Anger, desire, and all the other things, they have nothing to do with the control of the body. They may be having healthy bodies, but that healthy body, if it is not supported by a healthy mind, then it can actually be more harmful. They will tend to enjoy more, they'll become more and more gross, because now they get a new energy. A person who would have been satisfied with a small thing, now he feels, I have enough energy to do more gross things. So he will be in fact misusing that prana if it is diverted to the body. So you can't have both. It is like you can't have spiritual development and at the same time physical development. Physical development minimum is required to keep the body fit, but beyond that, any excess of prana being used in enhancing the body, that becomes a disease. Anything good with beyond limits, even medicines, suppose vitamin D is good, vitamin E is good, and you start taking more than what is required, then it can be harmful. Every medicine, if it is taken in quantities which are more than normal can be harmful. So also pranayama, to a certain extent, it can help your body to be fit. And then you have to focus on the mind and give more importance to fitness of the mind. Then automatically it will control anger. The anger which you are speaking of is nothing but lack of control of the mental waves, which prana would have done if he or she would have focused on controlling the mind rather than controlling the body and stopping the aging process, or enhancing the qualities of the body, making them strong, powerful, and all those things. They will come anyway. If you are doing mantra and do some pranayama as an after effect, a little bit of physiological changes will be there. I'm not saying that it will not help the body, but let us not focus on that. Otherwise, that will become an obsession, and our mind will become worse, if not better. If it becomes worse, then a strong body can be still make it worse, because they will get a new energy and they will direct all that energy into anger. That anger which they get, it will be multiplied several times. In fact, control of prana without controlling anger has a tendency to increase your negative qualities multiple times. So if a person was getting less angry, if he has been practicing pranayama with that anger, without controlling that anger, when he gets angry, he'll be angry 3 times than before, more than before. And if he'll be greedy, he'll be more greedy. I mean, in all respects, the focusing of prana on the physical side, on the wrong side, can result. That's why they say a guru is necessary even to practice pranayama on the body. Anything optimum, the guru, if he is a real guru or a real yogi, Patanjali's yoga system he has followed, he will warn you. He has to warn you that this is enough. Now you focus on the mind and go to higher levels of your personality. Otherwise, you will get stagnated. So you have to remember that there is no connection between the two. A healthy body and a healthy mind, very often they can go contradictory. I mean, they can go in opposite directions. One may have a healthy body with a very, very unhealthy mind. And on the contrary, one can have a healthy mind with a perhaps not such a strong body. So we tend to misjudge people. That's why many people asked, why did Swamiji have so many sickness? Why did he die young? If he was a yogi, why he? Because he never bothered to keep his body fit. He didn't have time. He used his prana power to help others. He did not bother about caring for this small body, which anyway he had no use. He did not want to live long also. But if your purpose is not to lengthen your life, then why should the prana be misused to unnecessarily support your body when it can be used for higher purposes? That we have to remember, and that's what Swami Vivekananda did, and that's what he is warning us. In the next chapters he will warn us. Make sure that the body, the pranayama which you do, whichever way you do, is used for evolving yourself towards more and more to a life of the spirit rather than the life of the body, or go towards the lower levels. Okay?
Thank you so much, Maharaj,
Okay.
because this
So
is
I'll
very
take
important.
leave. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So I'll take your leave. So almost 1 hour more I took. Namaste.
Thank you.